The AI products that win, ChatGPT, Cursor, Claude Code, they delight. They're not just better at their functional job. They're doing something most AI product builders miss. They're engineering delight.
When we build products, we are supposed to meet both dimensions, the functional needs of our users, but also the emotional needs of our users. And if we only focus on the functional part, there is a risk, and I see it as a trap.
Nesrine Changuel is the product leader behind Spotify Unwrapped and Google Meet's AI transcription.
In today's episode, we're going to dig deep into how to engineer delight into AI products and beyond.
Today, she's going to break down her exact toolkit to engineer delight into your AI products.
The only thing is that they don't necessarily know how to.
What makes ChatGPT so successful?
Successful product used to create loyalty. It's about creating that emotional connection. It's not a feature, it's a relationship that you need to build. The Delight model is a 4-step process. First step is about identifying users' motivators. The second step is about turning those motivators into real product opportunities. Once you identify those opportunities, you create solutions. And then the last step, which for me is fundamental and very necessary, is about validating delight.
Why do some products feel like they're delivering on both of these areas of delight and others fail?
Because some of them are authentic and others might feel like
Really quickly, I think a crazy stat is that more than 50% of you listening are not subscribed. If you can subscribe on YouTube, follow on Apple or Spotify podcasts, my commitment to you is that we'll continue to make this content better and better. And now on to today's episode. Nesrine, it's so nice to be filming with you. How are you?
Hi, Aakash. I'm excited to be with you as well.
So we met up for breakfast. We planned out an amazing session for people today. I think they're going to get a ton of value here. Let's start here. What's the one thing that separates billion-dollar AI products from the graveyard of forgotten tools?
Let me be clear. When I talk about product, I talk about successful products, and I talk a lot about how can we create standout products. And those standout products has something in common. They blend while building the product 2 dimensions. They blend the functional dimension and the emotional dimension into the same core experience. So I do believe that for product to stand out and to differentiate themselves and to create what I call excellence, it's really important to create them in a way that we address both functional needs and also emotional needs. So that's the essence. When I talk about delight, it's about creating those 2 dimensions while crafting the solution, not like separately.
So why do some products feel like they're delivering on both of these areas of delight and others fail?
Because some of them are authentic and others might feel like something on top, a bit like fake. Let's be transparent. So I usually distinguish between different type of delight. There is what I call the surface delight, and there is the other type, which is the deep delight. And here's the thing. Like when we talk about surface delight, these are just those shiny moments, those confetti effect, those animation that makes the product a little bit brighter. And of course, we know that they are nice to have, but it's not necessarily what is making this strong emotional connection that I'm talking about. However, on the other side, the deep delight is when we create functional solutions while addressing emotional needs while building them. So you see the difference. It's not about that sprinkling confetti on top of utility. It's about creating the product while addressing the emotional need at the same time. So that's the big difference between the 2 types of delight.
I think that's a really important distinction. Why do some AI products just shoot themselves in the foot?
So when we talk about delight, let's be very clear. It's about emotion. And by the way, one element that we can address and clarify here is that delight by itself is an emotion. And there have been some studies like conceptualizing delight as a combination of 2 primary emotions. These emotions are joy and surprise. So just think about yourself. If you are in a moment where you are experiencing joy and surprise at the same time, then you are delighted. The problem is, when we talk about emotion, what makes you happy is not necessarily what makes others happy. And even yourself, you might be happy with a situation that may not make the same effect on you, on other situations. So inclusiveness is really, really important in that aspect, and making sure that you create that joy instead of disappointment. You see, like that's the problem. And I've seen this in action, unfortunately, in many products. We can talk about few products that try to be delightful, but in some situation turns out to be, unfortunately, more disappointing than delightful. And I brought two examples to share with you today.
Let's take a look.
Yes, so the first one is actually that went viral, I think, on social media. People spoke about it's this Apple Message AI summary. So of course the idea was like when you receive a long message on your phone, then you get like a short 2 sentences summary, and that's supposed to reduce friction for you and make it easier for you. However, there are situations where summary doesn't make sense at all. And I'm taking this screenshot because like this post went viral on LinkedIn and X and a lot of social media. And it's a real situation that someone get a long message from his girlfriend saying that she's leaving and she's quitting and she want to take her belonging. And it's actually a very long message with a lot of explanation. But if you see the message, how it went and came as a summary, like no longer in a relationship, wants belonging from the apartment, like was so cold. And funny enough, it was his birthday. I mean, that's why, like, that's exactly the opposite of delight. That's when you try to bring joy, but turns out to be disappointment. So there are moments where delight doesn't work if the emotions are not addressed exactly as they should be. That's the first example.
That's crazy. Like this is like AI gone rogue, right? So,
Yeah.
and it's very hard to predict as a product manager that, you might have created your eval test suite of 200, but you didn't create the one about breakup messages and just being super sensitive there. And all of a sudden this is out there in the wild. And so this is the type of problem people trying to engineer delight have to really work around.
Yes, so that's actually something I did a lot as a PM, is to look at corner cases, because we don't want to have bad press. We don't want to hurt users. I mean, it's better not to bring delight than to bring delight the wrong way. So for example, when I worked on Google Meet and we introduced filters, we made sure that it worked on all skin tones. And there have been one skin tone that it didn't work well. We did not ship the feature because we don't want to hurt even like 0.01% of the population. That won't be aligned with the value of the product, and that will not be delightful because it's not aligned with our values. So that's an interesting case. The other case I wanted to bring is actually a real story from one of my best friends who actually shared this story with me. And we are all user of WhatsApp in a way or another. And she actually, it happens that she lost her brother quite recently. And she was scrolling some messages on WhatsApp and found out there is a picture of her brother holding her baby, like her 6-month baby at the time. So she clicked on the picture and she couldn't get the picture, and instead she got this like a very similar message to this saying like, this picture is no longer available, ask John to resend it. This kind of, the fact that ask John to resend it in that grief moment was the worst message she said like I could even receive. She said like, I was willing to not use WhatsApp anymore. Like I'm taking this screenshot, it's a real one, like for also the same for if you get an audio message and you want to re-listen to it. So sometimes it's about choosing the wording so you make sure that it's appropriate for all cases and all situations.
That's absolutely wild. Yeah, I think that this is only getting tougher with AI features.
Yes, so here's the thing. AI is making a lot of progress when it comes to functionality. And remember, I said something in the beginning that when we build products, we are supposed to meet both dimensions, the functional needs of our users, but also the emotional needs of our users. And if we only focus on the functional part, because AI is allowing to progress so fast in developing functional features, then there is a risk, and I see it as a trap, that we ignore a little bit the emotional need and we become like just functional product. And that's the worst case that we don't want to fall into. So it doesn't mean that we should not work with AI the way it is today, but in the opposite, we need to train AI to be better at addressing emotional needs. And we see quite nice products like succeeding in doing it. The most important thing, and that's why I want to talk about this inclusiveness, is to ask yourself the following question. Is it inclusive enough? Is there any corner cases that has not been addressed? And if not, how can I train my agent? How can I train my machines to make sure that I am experiencing most of the cases to avoid whatever bad harm might happen out of that?
I think you had shared with me an interesting example from Deliveroo around this.
Yes, because that's an interesting case as well, since we're talking about the bad corner cases, and that's something that just happened last year. So I'm based in Paris, and on Mother's Day, Deliveroo tried to do a delightful campaign. So what they did, and these are real screenshots by the way, they sent a notification on all like a user's mobile, and the notification, as you can see, look exactly like a missed call. So this is written in French. It says like appel manqué, which means it literally missed call from your mom. And so again, when you click on this, you're supposed to get like, hey, it's Mother's Day, think about your mother, send her flower, blah, blah. I mean, we can help you doing that. That's what the campaign is all about. But again, this is something that had the worst press ever because a lot of people felt hurt. And not everyone can feel the joy out of this supposed to be delightful moment. Some of them felt weird, some other felt grief, some other felt sorrow. And so again, this is a pure example when delight can go wrong if it's not addressing all cases and all corner examples.
I think the delight challenge around corner cases is perhaps hardest for something like ChatGPT, right? It needs to succeed in every single corner case. What is ChatGPT's success really about? Is it about delight? What makes ChatGPT so successful?
So if we talk about ChatGPT is definitely one of the product now that is used by most people around. Like again, we might not maybe all agree on how it's used. Some are using it more like a search engine, and other they're using it more as a company. And I like this concept of I'm using ChatGPT as a company, or like a co-writer or a co-worker, or you see the point. So I've been talking a lot with many of my friends and ex-colleagues about how are they using ChatGPT, and I'm realizing that a lot of my friends are paying subscription to ChatGPT not for the functional part, but for the fact that they are feeling less lonely with the products. Like especially like I personally very recently moved from being a full-time employee and very well established organization to working by myself, and having ChatGPT on my side honor that need of creating that company feeling and feeling less lonely aspect. So that's one part, because the set of emotions is not necessarily the same for all products. I mean, when we talk about Spotify, the set of emotion that I'm looking for while using Spotify is definitely not the same set of emotion that I might be looking for while using ChatGPT. So it's really important, whatever product you are building, to identify what set of emotions you want to feel and build toward achieving those emotions.
That was great. So in the case of ChatGPT, how do we make sure that we achieve that sense of belonging, that sense of company into the product?
So here's the thing. We as human beings have some core value and we have some core needs. And these needs, of course, we are doing our best to honor those needs. And one of the needs that is very evident, and it's got even more proven during COVID time, is the fact that we want to be closer human to human. So we want to be, of course, in company, we want to be closer to other peers. And this is a concept that also can be very much integrated into tech products. Here's the thing. I can talk about a technique that I'm calling humanization. What it means is that how can we build products that feels like it's a human. It's not necessarily a machine. What I mean by that is that asking your question, if my product was a human being, how would the reaction be? How would the service would be? And then compare your product to to that level of service or that level of product. And I'm bringing here an example because it's a real conversation I had with the head of product back then from Dyson. And I asked Andy, the head of product from Dyson, hey, how come that I love my vacuum cleaner? It's a vacuum cleaner and I feel proud of having it. I show it to my guests and friends, and how come? And he shared an interesting story with me. He actually said, we do not compare our vacuum cleaner to competitors. We do compare our robot to how it would have been done better if it was done by a human being. You see the point? Actually, he told me that if you hire someone to clean your house, you probably ask that person to start with a certain room, or you probably clean in a certain way, and they got inspired by this kind of recommendation system to add it into their robots. And the reality, Aakash, is that that's exactly what we did at Google Meet as well, because when I worked for Google Meet, we almost never compared Google Meet to Zoom or to Teams or whatever, but we compared Google Meet to how it would be better if we were all in the same room having the same meeting, but in a human style. And if you do so, you raise the bar, because that's exactly what our brain is so willing to have, and that's exactly what we want to have as well. So for example, we developed features like hand raise, or we developed features like emoji reactions. These features were born out of conversation, if my product was a human, how the experience could be better.
That's fascinating. Today's episode is brought to you by Miro. Let me ask you something. How many tools are you juggling just to get a single project across the finish line? One for brainstorming, another for planning, something else for tracking tickets. That's where Miro comes in. It becomes an all-in-one collaboration workspace. Whether you're consolidating user research from several interviews, developing and synthesizing product briefs or a wireframe, or project managing development, Miro brings everyone into the same space. It's fast, intuitive, and fully loaded with features like project templates, two-way Jira sync, and integration with software like Draw.io and PlantUML. Miro's AI features can be used to synthesize elements in a board to develop a ready-to-review product requirements document in seconds. If you're tired of tab overload and scattered workflows, try Miro. Head to Miro.com and see why over 90 million users choose Miro to guide from idea to outcome. Today's episode is brought to you by Vanta. As a founder, you're moving fast toward product market fit, your next round, or your first big enterprise deal. But with AI accelerating how quickly startups build and ship, security expectations are higher earlier than ever. Getting security and compliance right can unlock growth, or stall it if you wait too long. With deep integrations and automated workflows built for fast-moving teams, Vanta gets you audit-ready fast and keeps you secure with continuous monitoring as your models, infra, and customers evolve. Fast-growing startups like LangChain, Writer, and Cursor trusted Vanta to build a scalable foundation from the start. So go to vanta.com/Aakash, that's vanta.com/AAKASH, to save $1,000 and join over 10,000 ambitious companies already scaling with Vanta. So they're really bringing that humanization into the feature development process so that you're focusing on the human element instead of the competitive element. Are there specific variables or types of emotions or ways people should be thinking about bringing humanization into their product?
Yes. And again, it's not a bucket of emotions. I think it depends a lot on the product you are developing. Again, we spoke about the example of Spotify earlier. The set of emotions that you are looking for is definitely not the same set of emotions that you might expect out of a product like Teams or like Miro or Atlassian or whatever. So what I can highlight here is that, and that's something that I've seen from coaching a lot of organizations, like people don't necessarily want to agree or to feel agreed with. However, they value very much feeling seen, heard, and valued, right? So if your product can allow them to have this kind of set of feeling. I want to feel more heard. I want to feel more seen, or I want to feel valued through my work. Maybe I want to feel like a better facilitator. I want to feel like a better leader. I want to feel like a better than the frauder. For example, if I have a product against that, then that's an interesting set of product that can bring that product to humanization style. And the best example I can bring here is, for example, the Spotify AI DJ. This is a very interesting project, by the way. It's been now growing in many countries. It started from the UK and now it's available in so many company and countries. But the beauty of this specific product is that it adapts the way how it speaks to the user based on what type of playlist you want to listen to, what time in the day you are trying to listen to that playlist, also what kind of mood are you in. And this is again very much aligned with the set of emotion of feeling heard and feeling seen. So and I see a lot of company trying to navigate through these two sets of emotions nowadays.
And you can access this AI DJ through ChatGPT?
Actually, this is very new, what I've seen very recently, and that's, I think, a week ago that I've seen Gupta, the new president of Spotify, talking about the integration of Spotify with ChatGPT. And the interesting part was not only the integration. Let me be honest with you. I was very interested by the text in the message, the post itself. So Gustav didn't say we integrated Spotify into ChatGPT. He said, if you want to get a playlist from ChatGPT, or if you have a set of emotion you want to honor, now you can get them. So now you see leaders of top companies talking about emotion in their way of communicating around their product and their features. It's very clear that, emotion was part of the text, was part of the marketing campaign, because we value and we see clear connection between product success and honoring users' emotion in the product.
So when ChatGPT is thinking about engineering delight and it's thinking about it, we've already said don't think about it too much from a competitive lens. Think about it more from a humanistic lens, but you're living in a competitive marketplace versus a Claude or something like that. Are these integrations, are these good factors that a PM should be considering, good tactics to potentially build more delight into their product and differentiate from the competition like Claude?
From my perspective, and I've seen this working both for the product I've been building, but also in so many other products, competition is very easy if we compete on the functional side only. If you have a product that is brilliantly engineered and users are using it, tomorrow if they find another product that gives them the same set of functionality, users will feel very easily, there's no attachment. They can easily move to the new product, especially if you offer them a lower price. However, here is the secret ingredient that product or successful product use to create loyalty. It's about creating that emotional connection. If you invest in creating that emotional connection, it will take time, by the way. It's not a feature. It's not two features. It's a relationship that you need to build. And you need to build from the start, by the way, because you want to gain the trust, you want to gain the confidence, and you want to gain the proudness as well, because you want to make sure that users are proud enough to tell the word. So if you invest in this emotional connection, then it's much, much harder for your user to move to competitor. And that's why I really emphasized on the fact that delight is a lens of differentiation. It's a lens for growth. It is a driver for standing out and having a longer relationship with the users. And by the way, I want to highlight something maybe interesting for our audience here, that there have been recently quite interesting researches, and this research has been conducted by giants like Capgemini, Deloitte, Harvard Business Review, McKinsey. Actually, they all studied the same thing. They studied the impact of emotional connection on product adoption. And so out of this report, and I spent weeks trying to compel and get the best out of this report, I realized that there is a consensus, and the consensus is saying that emotionally connected users are twice more likely to stay longer, twice more likely to recommend your product, and twice more likely to buy more product and services from you. So you are doubling revenue, retention, and referral just with the ingredient of emotional connection. And by the way, do you know what they are comparing these numbers to? They are comparing them to highly satisfied users. So the two buckets are highly satisfied users and emotionally connected users. So you see the potential by investing into this area.
I think that delight has to be one of the most important factors for differentiation for any product builder out there. And it's about thinking about both the small and the big investments. Here we see, I would say, what would be like maybe a little bit of a smaller investment where you just integrate with a delight feature that Spotify has had. But as you stack up these delightful experiences, that's how you create differentiation. And if we look at the monthly active users of a Claude versus a ChatGPT now crossing 800 million. Claude's still stuck well below 100 million. Being first mover helps ChatGPT, but all these elements of delight, all the consistent shipping they're doing also, I think, are playing a really important role. And I love how you're highlighting that here. Do you have any other examples that would really help illustrate how to stack in these competitive vectors of different delight?
Yeah, I mean, the second example I have is an example of a product that is very close to my heart, which is Google Meet. I've been working and building product like Google Meet for years, and I see how much value is put into like a product like Meet. And by the way, maybe what people don't necessarily know about Google Meet is that Google invests so heavily into Delight that they create Delight teams. Like I have been the PM for the Delight team in Google Meet. And it's not unique for Google Meet. It's also the case for Google Search, for Chrome, and for most of the Google products. So at Google Meet, our mission was to make sure that we create the most delightful experience. And so when I left Google Meet, this feature got shipped by my ex-team, I would say, and they shipped the Google Meet Translator, which is powered by AI, of course. So what is beautiful about this feature is not only about translation. I mean, translation is definitely not a new technology. It's about featuring your own voice and even integrating your own emotion in the way how your speech is translated. And that for me is the power of this tool. Because like translation, as I said, itself is not a new technology, but integrating your own emotion and your tone and your voice into the translation make you feel present, make you feel connected, and suddenly even make you feel surprised about yourself speaking another language.
I love that example. So as I was reading your book, thank you so much for writing this. I think one of the coolest resources you put in here was that there were 3 types of delight. Can you walk us through those and how those might relate to AI products?
Yes. So here's the thing. Again, we always get back to this concept of every product is created for 2 reasons, for functional reasons and for emotional reasons. If the feature you are building is only solving for a functional reason, there is no emotion into it, then it belongs to this category that I call the low delight. If your feature is only solving for an emotional need and there is definitely no functional need into it, then it is a surface delight. Think about this confetti thing, or this like Easter eggs that we see nowadays in some products, or even the emojis in Slack, or the emojis in ChatGPT as well, in order to add this tone and the fun effect in the output. And then the third category is what I call the deep delight, and that's when functionality meets emotion. And that's when we create products that are like blending the 2 dimensions together. So let's maybe go through some examples so we understand a little bit more these categories. I think the low delight category is very easy to understand. That's what most people are doing nowadays. Like they are building features that work, and that's what we want. Now, the surface delight is actually something, for example, just happened to me a few weeks ago. It was my birthday, and on my birthday, my Apple Watch just popped up some balloons and some interesting confetti saying, "Happy birthday, Nesrine." Is there any functional need for that? Maybe not. Same for Wrapped, by the way, and I'm gonna surprise you now, because a feature like Spotify Wrapped, which you get like this retrospective toward the end of the year, there is no functional reason for having Wrapped. It's all about making you feel cool so that you can share it with your friends. And these kind of features might sometimes have a lot of positive impact on the business and the product, because like feature like Wrapped had a huge impact on the app downloads. Just Wrapped by itself had a huge impact on the app download. I want to also, since we're talking about Spotify, I want to highlight an interesting feature. And I was talking to the head of product who actually came up with this feature on Spotify, which is when it's a season, like these are seasonal features on Spotify, it turns the progress bar into lighting when it was Diwali time. So when Spotify was trying to grow in India, we tried like to make the product feel a little bit more local, and so like Indian users might feel like more connected to the product. So when it was Diwali, we just slightly just turned the progress bar from a regular dot, like the green dot, into this sparkling light. And this feature by itself, like I remember I had this very interesting conversation with the head of product who came with this idea, told me like it went viral in India. Everyone was talking like, hey, we need to download Spotify to see this. It's not about listening to the music. It's about, I want to see the progress bar turning into this twinkling light. So that's why don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Surface Delight is not interesting. It is important for the brand and the personality of the product. It's just not the unique and the only delight that will bring growth. It has to be like addressed with some control, I would say.
And then Diwali seems like really is hitting at what Indians like feel their pride. And so it's something about really understanding your users and not just, sprinkling some random delight on there, but getting to something they're really going to associate with.
Yeah, I mean, I usually use seasonality as a great driver for delight. Let me explain. Again, when I work for Google Meet, we introduced background replace. That was COVID time when we quickly realized that, hey, most of people are moving from having like meetings in offices and classrooms into 100% remote. And those same people started to realize that they want to protect their privacy, they want to protect their, of course, their private life. And so we quickly introduced background replace. And again, it might sound like obvious nowadays, but at that time, the need was not that much clarified. It got clarified through COVID. And so we introduced background replace with a static image. And then we started introducing like a seasonal background. So when it was Christmas, we introduced Christmas background for a certain period of time, like few weeks. When it was Diwali, we introduced Diwali background. When it was Ramadan, we introduced Ramadan background. The idea is that we want to surprise our users in a seasonal, but also in a personal way. And again, the risk is that you are not inclusive enough. So you want to make sure that you're not excluding some people and only like addressing some people's value. So we try to be as much diverse as we can. So we even did some Olympic themed background when it was like Olympic game. The idea again is like to surprise our users positively, but also in a continuous way to avoid this habituation effect. The habituation effect is when you see something, you get surprised the first time, but then you're not surprised anymore. And in order to maintain delight, we wanted to do this in a continuous and repetitive way. And that's also another example that we see from the progress bar on Spotify.
Very, very interesting. So what does it look like if you're trying to engineer deep delight?
So deep delight now is a different aspect. It's not even comparable to the surface delight. The surface delight, I think it's even well understood from designers. Designers are really good at understanding surface delight. They will help you into getting these shiny moments. However, before we move to deep delight, I want to make sure that even surface delight has to be there for a reason. I mean, it's not about, hey, I can shake my phone and you can get confetti or snowflake or whatever. You need to ask yourself, what value am I honoring? What emotional need am I honoring? Like think about Diwali as we spoke, etc. So if there is a value for the user or the business, do it. If there is no value, just for the fun, skip. Now, let's move to the deep delight. Deep delight now is when you are building a functional feature, like you are already like thinking about improving your functionality. Think about how can I do this in a way that I integrate my user's emotion. And let me give you an example. I will give two examples. The first one is from my time working for Google Chrome. When I joined Google Chrome, actually I worked on one of the toughest, I would say, problem on Chrome, which is managing tabs. So we know that a lot of our users do have many tabs open. And so, of course, from a functional perspective, that's not ideal. You end up having a product that is heavier, from a performance perspective, it's not that great. From a memory perspective, it's not what you want, etc. So we wanted to encourage our users to close their tab. But at the same time, we wanted also our user to enjoy their experience in navigating through their tabs. So what's the solutions? Some of the solution we explored is like, what if we close tabs on their behalf? And we quickly realized that that's the worst solution you can bring. Why? Because when we interviewed our users, we did it, by the way, on a very repetitive way. We realized that there is a relationship between users and tab. It's not like just a connection, it's a relationship. Some people would tell you, don't touch my tab. It's like in a very aggressive way. So we quickly realized that, okay, that's not an area we're gonna get closer to. So how can we still help them without frustrating them or creating friction? While doing this investigation and user interview, we realized that also the number of open tabs creates some confusion, because some people will feel like ashamed when they show us their tab grid, and they will probably, like some of them, apologize saying, hey, sorry, I usually don't have so many tabs open. So all these insights turns out to be very useful. Like, we wrote down what's possible, what's not possible at all, what is a red line, and what's like the emotion, what's the provocation that we made out of this conversation. And we created a feature, by the way, that we called inactive tabs. It's available on iOS, Chrome iOS. That meets this functional need, which is about like improving the performance, but at the same time honoring the user's emotion or the user's value. So inactive tabs is this possibility of grouping all tabs that have not been visited or opened for more than 21 days, and so they are grouped in this group. And of course, users will see all tabs that have been opened over the last 21 days. And if they want to see their old tabs, and they rarely do, by the way, they just like care about them, but they will never go to, they know that they are there. So there is a connection of trust, there is a relation of trust and confidence that we didn't want to touch at all. So that's the example I personally worked on, and I see it as a pure example of deep delight, because we try to compress thumbnails and make the inactive tabs like taking less memory and space, but at the same time improve the experience and honor the user's needs.
AI is writing code faster than ever, but can your testing keep up? TestCube is the Kubernetes native platform that scales testing at the pace of AI accelerated development. One dashboard, all your tools, full oversight. Run functional and load tests in minutes, not hours, across any framework, any environment. No vendor lock-in, no bottlenecks, just confidence that your AI-driven releases are tested, reliable, and ready to ship. TestCube, scale testing for the AI era. See more at testcube.io/Aakash. That's testcube.io/AAKASH. Today's episode is brought to you by the experimentation platform Chameleon. 9 out of 10 companies that see themselves as industry leaders and expect to grow this year say experimentation is critical to their business. But most companies still fail at it. Why? Because most experiments require too much developer involvement. Chameleon handles experimentation differently. It enables product and growth teams to create and test prototypes in minutes with prompt-based experimentation. You describe what you want, Chameleon builds a variation of your web page, lets you target a cohort of users, choose KPIs, and runs the experiment for you. Prompt-based experimentation makes what used to take days of developer time turn into minutes. Try prompt-based experimentation on your own web apps. Visit chameleon.com/prompt to join the waitlist. That's KAMELEOON.com/prompt. What's your take on Gmail Smart Compose? Is that a good example of deep delight?
Yeah. Same. For me, this is another great example of deep delight, because it's about, again, there is a functional part. Your functional part is, I want to help you write your message. The functional side is making you answer your email or sending emails. But at the same time, I'm making you feel less stressed. I'm making you feel less frustrated as well, or even like making it feel easier for you. So you see, I already used at least 3 times the term making you feel. Why? Because it's not only about making you write an email, it's making you write an email in the easiest but also in the relaxed way. So for me, it's another example of deep delight that could meet this category.
I think 2 other examples that people should really pay attention to. So one is a Claude Code. So I think that they're getting their deep delight and they're winning, right, in this developer market against a GitHub Copilot or a ChatGPT Codex, where they infusing similar things like autocomplete, like a Gmail Smart Compose, but they're adding on delight. Like they have these crazy verbs every time it's working. It's like meandering or bamboozling or pontificating or whatever different interesting verbs that they're putting in there. And similarly, cursor. So we're seeing through these spaces in AI products like Cursor, where you just hit tab and it feels like magic as a coder, that delight, and specifically deep delight, is the way to win for AI products. I think it's probably one of the most important lessons out there. But a lot of our examples so far have really been in the B2C realm, people could say. Could you give us some examples in B2B?
Yes. So I love, by the way, the example you brought from the AI word. And I just want to compliment one more thing, because over the weekend, I've been trying to prototype with Lovable. And again, this is one of those products that everyone starts to know nowadays. I mean, if you don't know Lovable, it's like you feel like so much behind. And I love the time I spent on Lovable. The reason is not only the output I get or the product I managed to prototype, it's the sense of achievement out of 4 hours of work. This is a very rare, like sentiment or feeling I usually get. Like I was so much impressed not only by the outcome, but also of that sense of achievement, which is again one of our emotional needs. Is to wanna feel like accomplishing and valued, and that's an interesting part. I just want to compliment what you said about. Now, when it comes to B2B or B2C, I just want to highlight one thing here. Is like when we talk about honoring emotional needs, I rarely distinguish between B2C and B2B. I mostly talk about B2H, which is the business to human, because if the user is used by a human being toward the end, then they need their emotion, or they deserve their emotion to be honored. So that's the concept. That's the mindset I usually do. Now, I also agree with you. Most of the product I worked on are more toward B2C, like Spotify, Skype, Google Meet. Even if, like, for Google Meet, we also addressed the enterprise side, and we brought a lot of delight, by the way, in the enterprise side. But the reality is that when I started writing my book, Product Delight book, I interviewed a lot of people from the B2B space in order to get their opinion toward what it makes to build delightful products. So I interviewed people like from Intuit, Atlassian, Miro, Slack. The point was like, hey, I'm considering you as delightful product. How do you do? And what I realized that all those products do integrate the principle of delight. They just integrate them in different ways. So for example, let me give you an example. When I spoke with some product leaders from Dropbox, I realized that they had a product value called Cupcake. When I spoke to people from Snowflake, which is a pure tech company, I realized that they had a value called Superhero. They want to make their user feel like superhero. So that's the point. And I quickly realized that they have more or less the same goal in order to achieve this excellence and this human connection. They just call it differently. And that's the beauty part. So whether B2B or B2C, we need to take, or at least think about it the same way. The big difference though, and that's what I want to highlight, is again, it's not the same set of emotions. So if you're working toward building a B2B product, the set of emotion that you want your user to feel is definitely something worth investigating and trying to understand. I was talking the other day with a heavy user of Miro, and she told me something quite interesting. She said, actually, what I love about using Miro is that I feel like I'm a better facilitator. I feel like I'm a better leader. And she didn't say like, I can use board or I can move cards or whatever. She said like, I feel like I can do my job better. I can feel as a better leader. And that's an interesting set of emotion in the B2B space to investigate. I'm not saying it is the set of emotion, it's one of them that you might consider others as well.
So I think that there's also this element where if you're going to delight the end user, you're going to delight the person who wants it, you're going to create a lot more lock-in for those enterprise contracts. Eventually those enterprise contracts you might get more of them because the user talks to the buyer, or the user is the same as the buyer, or the buyer tries out the product as a user. So there's so many different ways where delight, I feel like in a B2B context, we shouldn't ignore it. I think that I've generally seen more PMs of delight like you were on gigantic consumer products, but there are probably some B2B products out there that could really use a delight PM and create it as their differentiation vector.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see that as well. Like Atlassian recently released a blog post called The New Jira. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a long blog post. I mean, it's not that recent. It's like from couple of months ago, and New Jira is actually the list of new features that was released out of the recent release of their Jira. And I went through all the lists and I tried to apply the delight model on all the features that they released, and I realized that almost 70%, really, like almost 70% of the new features that got listed in that New Jira blog post applies to the delight concept. And that's a great example to see, like pure B2B company investing into delight. And the reason is because we as users are so much, we are interfering with so many B2B or B2C products that our expectation now is raising. Like since we see delight in B2C, we also expect to see it in B2B. If I don't see it, then I will check if there's any other product where I can find more delight into it. So I agree that it's definitely a tool for differentiation, and it's definitely a tool for success as well.
So if you're trying to decompose it into a model, which you have done in your book, what would that model be? What is the delight model, and how can you engineer delight?
So after with my own experience, and also by interviewing a lot of leaders from different industry, by the way, like I checked hardware industry, B2B industries, like tech industry, like a GitHub or Snowflake. I mean, these are a company that I don't necessarily have big knowledge about how they develop their product, but I spent a lot of months interviewing them. Actually, I have a research background. Like I did a PhD in my early days, so I put my researcher hat again, and I did my research to try to consolidate both my knowledge together with what I consider successful outside of my knowledge. And I ended up creating what I call the delight model. So the delight model, I mean, I'm more calling it as a model because I see it more like a mental model. First of all, delight is a mental model. You need to be convinced that you need to delight your customers. And here's the truth, Aakash. The reality is that now that I'm coaching companies and founders, I think and I see that most company and most founders agree that we need to delight our customers. They will tell you we should delight our customers. All of them, all industries confused. The only thing is that they don't necessarily know how to. So we agree on the goal, we just don't know necessarily how to. So that for me was an eye-opener and a revealer that I needed to put this into something actionable. I needed to put it into like something step by step that people can benefit from. So the delight model is a 4-step, think about it as a model or a process that works the following. The first step is about identifying users' motivators. The second step is about turning those motivators into real product opportunities. Once you identify those opportunities, you create solutions and you categorize solutions into these different type of delights. And then the last step, which for me is fundamental and very necessary, is about validating delight. Why? Because we don't want to get into that bad press and all the risks that we started the session with today. So these are 4 steps, that operate into the opportunity space and the solution space. And if we follow them step by step, then we can guarantee at least that we can achieve this goal of delight.
So I assume there's a lot of depth here that we could go into. Let's start with identifying a user's motivators. What are the next level layers and techniques to do this well?
Yes, so it might be surprising, and a lot of time when I talk about this to leaders and founders, I surprise them the first time, but then they agree. The reality is that users use your product, but they are not using it they are not all using it for the same reason. So you think that you're serving them the product for a reason, but they are using it for different reasons. And here's the thing, when you're building a new feature or a new product, of course you have to start with segmenting your users. You need to start by like doing your personas and creating your personas to understand who they are. But what I see nowadays is that there is the different type of segmentation. There is the demographic segmentation. It's about the who they are. And there is a second type of segmentation, which is more about the behavioral segmentation. And that's a little bit better than the demographic segmentation. But the very best one is the motivational segmentation. It's the why. It's why your users are using your product. And you need to invest, and that's the very first step. If we skip that step, the rest will not match. We need to start by listing what motivates my users on the functional side and what motivates my users on the emotional side. Here an example, like when I built Spotify together with my team, we know that from a functional side, some people go to Spotify knowing exactly what album they want to listen to. So they want to search for a specific album. But there are also other users who have no idea what they want to listen to. They go to Spotify to get inspired. So another need could be inspire me, or I want to get inspired with whatever thing that you know about me, maybe my tastes, my preferences. So these belong to the functional motivators. On the other side, a lot of people go to Spotify just because they want to change their mood, or because they want to feel less lonely, or they want to feel more productive. So these are also area, like let's call them emotional motivators, that need to be identified. Why? Because when you build the feature later on in the process, you want to blend them together to create that emotional connections. So for me, that's the most important part. It's about identifying the motivators, but also from the functional sides, but not only, please, not only, because most of the people I spoke with are really good at identifying functional motivators. Think about the emotional motivators of your users, and if you manage to get them right, it's a continuous process, by the way. It's not like a one time and then I'm done with my motivators. Every time you have an opportunity to speak with your users, try to ask this question, like walk me through the journey of using the product and describe how you feel. Even if you don't ask that question, like take notes, as the example of Google Chrome, this frustration feeling, this shame feeling, this relationship feeling, address that and write them down.
What are some of the motivational segmentations we could think of for a product like Spotify?
So usually when we talk about functional motivators, they can belong into these three types of categories. It's either solving a problem, or it's about creating efficiency, or it could be related to ease of use. So if the feature is related to ease of use, efficiency, or solving a specific problem, then that belongs to still like this bucket of functional motivators. However, on the emotional motivators, and that's something that I love talking about, there is two buckets. There is the personal emotional motivators, and there is the social emotional motivators. Let me explain. The personal emotional motivators is how users want to feel while using the product. The social emotional motivators is how users want others to feel about them while using the product. You see the difference? So for example, a lot of people would go to Spotify because they want to feel part of the vibe. They want to feel part of the community. They want to, this is a sense of proudness. It's a sense of community that most of the successful company, by the way, build. Like if you think about company like Slack, it's not only the product that is successful, it's the community. Like people are bringing in their knowledge, they are bringing in their bots and their experience into the community. And the same for Spotify. Like we developed a feature like Jam. It's the possibility to listen to music with others. It's the collaborative playlist, which is one of the most successful feature, by the way, because it gives you that sense of belonging, it gives you that sense of connection. And I'm going to share with you a concrete example, by the way, because I truly believe that for a product to succeed, there's a true connection between success and the sense of proudness. Like remember this Dyson thing I told you, like I'm proud of showing my vacuum cleaner. It might feel weird, but it's so true, because the other day I was actually coaching a founder of a company. The company is about helping music curator to get music artists get connected with curator in order to get known in the music space and get some advertisement and some promotion. And so when I asked the founder how things are going, etc., and I asked the following question, I said, hey, do you think your users, these artists who's getting your service, are proud to use your product? And he actually said, I don't think they are. I don't think they are proud, because if they are using my product, they might feel like they are little. They are not big artists. They need our help in order to get known. And we stopped there. And then 2 weeks later, he came to me and said, hey, Nesrine, we really, really need to work on this particular point. We need to shift our strategy toward how can we make our users proud enough to tell the word, to tell other artists. Because you cannot play the game by yourself. You need to get the help of your users who will be proud and delighted, telling others to bring you more users.
Yeah, I've noticed that in my own business for the newsletter and podcast. That's the absolute only way to grow sustainably, especially at scale. So important. So you put together this delight grid that helps us walk through these. Can you walk us through that?
Yes. So the delight grid is another tool that I'm also describing very well in the book. And it's why, by the way, I created this delight grid. It's about helping teams who still wonder, is my feature delightful? Am I into the delight, surface delight or surface delight? Am I into the deep delight? I created what I call this delight grid. And the best way to think about delight grid is to use the motivators that we just spoke about. So remember, I spoke about functional motivators and emotional motivators. All you have to do is to go to your grid and write your motivators in the grid. So you see here on the vertical side, you have the functional motivators. On the horizontal side, you have all the emotional motivators. Why do we do that? Because once this is done, you're going to go and place your ideas from the backlog. And if a feature is only solving for functional motivators, then it belongs to the low delight category. If the feature is solving only for an emotional motivators, then it belongs to the surface delight. And we spoke of that. And then the rest is about deep delight. And what I love about the delight grid, it's not only a categorization tool. It's a tool that will force you that every feature you are building in the product is connected to a motivator. If you can't map it in the grid, it's probably not something that need to be there at all. And I did this workshop with a lot of organizations where we try to categorize their features in the delight grid, and we end up having 3-4 features that we are not at all able to map them. It's okay, if the user is not at all asking for it and there is no motivator for it, do you think it's really necessary to build it? And it's usually a great food for thought to think whether it's really needed or not.
Can you give us an example? Maybe walk us through the grid with an example product?
Yes. Since we spoke about Spotify, maybe we can continue talking about Spotify. So when I work for Spotify, features by the way, my team helped developing video podcasts. So we introduced video podcasts into Spotify. We also introduced a lossless, which is the ability to stream music in uncompressed music. Those features are usually more toward the low delight category. So we would bucket them into low delight. However, on the other side, features like the progress bar that turns into light or the wrapped feature would be more into the emotional motivators because it's making you feel connected, it's making you feel immersed. So these are some emotional motivators that you're honoring through these features. On the other side, features like Jam or Discover Weekly, by the way, it's an interesting example to talk about here, are more into the deep delight because it's about helping you find a new track or getting more inspired by a new playlist while listening with others. There is a sense of connection, there is a sense of belonging, and there is a deep level of personalization in Discover Weekly, for example. So this is maybe an example where you can think about the delight grid in action at Spotify. But let me maybe add one more thing here. Since we're talking about delight grid, I want to be very clear. I'm not here to say that It's not because it's called low delight that we should not invest in low delight. And here is my clarification. I get asked a lot of time about, hey, how do we prioritize between this low delight versus deep delight and surface delight? So I came with this rule that I'm calling the 50-40-10. The 50-40-10 is a recommendation. Think about it as a recommendation where I recommend your backlog or your roadmap to look like the following. 50% would be more for low delight, 40% for deep delight, and only 10% for surface delight. You might be surprised me telling you 50% of your roadmap should be low delight, but it's actually so necessary. I mean, your product exists for a reason, and this reason need to be there and need to function the right way. Now, if you can allocate 50% of the rest of your backlog toward the surface delight and deep delight, then you're gonna win. That's what will make you different. And that's the pure delight.
I love this framework because there's a big weighting towards deep delight here. It's like you might have some surface delight. We talked about things like that are good examples of that, but the more weighting you have towards deep delight, the higher returns you're going to get. The better retention you're going to see, the better word of mouth you're going to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is fascinating. We've been talking a lot about AI products. How would ChatGPT map to the delight grid?
Yeah, I think independently of the product, again, it all comes to the fact that we need to identify what motivates users, both functional side and emotional sides. It applies to hardware, software, AI. By the way how I see AI is more like an ingredient, like technology, features, they're all ingredient toward human connection. And so AI is one of the ingredients that we can, of course, well use or not well use, depending on the purpose, to achieve human connection. And if we want to talk about ChatGPT, of course, it's a great example because it's one of those great examples that we feel a certain human connection between us and the product. And so if we try to map it to the delight grid, I see clearly 3 buckets into how we are getting value out of ChatGPT. The first value belongs to this low delight. It's more about how accurate are the answers. Also the quality of the answers, the speed of the answer. This is all related to the low delight category. The second category, which is the surface delight, might be much more related to the tone and the warmth that you get out of the style and the voice. If you're using like a voice command, it's also about these emojis that might be added. It's about again how you're getting the answer. It's about this emotional connection there. And the deep delight comes more from combining those two together so that you feel like the sense of belonging and the sense of connection with the product. So think about, for example, so if you get one of the things that I love most about ChatGPT is that the fact that I'm using it over time, and the more I use it, the more the product get to know me, and the better the answers get customized and personalized to what I'm looking for. So the fact that I'm getting answers aligned with what I'm looking for and aligned to what I value is an example of deep delight, because the quality combined with how I want to get them is an example of deep delight. So you see, we're not talking about confetti here at all. We're not even talking about design. We're talking about how these 3 can be combined together to create the best experience.
So one more thing that you had put in the book that was a very interesting tool that I thought I personally will take away and use is the delight checklist. Can you walk us through that?
Yes. So the delight checklist is a tool that comes more toward the 4th step of the process. So when we are done with generating ideas, categorizing idea, understanding how much of them is low delight, surface delight, deep delight, then comes the time when you're about to start building them to check is it really delightful? Is it bringing me the value that I want to bring to the customer, to the user, and to the business? So the delight checklist, think about it as a guideline that you take every feature and ask the following questions. So it's not only a list of category, it's a list of questions as well. So the first 2, which for me are really important, is this delightful feature bringing any value to the business? and does it bring any value to the user? Because for me, delight is not an excuse to add confetti. It's about, again, aligning with business goals and KPIs and metrics. And also the same, I mean, we spoke about this example of confetti, and I would love to share an example since we're talking about confetti here. It's like I want to share an example from Airbnb, because I'm an Airbnb user both as a guest but also as a host. And as a host, I have a goal, and my goal is to make sure that I maintain my superhost tag. Yeah, I mean, I work hard. Amazing. I work hard to get that. I mean, for me, it's an achievement. And of course, I depend on users' review. I depend on my quality of service, a lot of things. But Airbnb actually reassess my ability to remain superhost every 3 months. And you know what? Every 3 months, when I'm still a superhost or I'm reevaluated to stay superhost, the app turns into confetti. Again, this is surface delight, yes, but for me, it's an interesting example because I feel like Airbnb is valuing the effort and recognizing the effort I've been putting into that goal. So I feel like the app is celebrating it with me. So confetti or not confetti, is it aligned with your business goal? Is it aligned with your user's goal? Those are the two. And the rest is like other guidance. Like, for example, have you been investigating enough to get insights from your users? Have you collected motivator from your users and from your data? You can also check whether the feature looks familiar or not. I really like this example because if you come up with something completely new, I mean, of course, we are told that we love innovation, but we actually hate when it's completely new. I mean, I see you surprised, so I will share a story with you. A story you might even know about, which is the story behind Discover Weekly. So Discover Weekly turns out to be one of the most successful features of Spotify. And do you know that Discover Weekly, the success of Spotify really came out of a bug? Because really? The real story behind Discover Weekly is that it was supposed to bring you only new track that you never listened to before. That's why it's called Discover. It's all about making you discover new tracks. And so when we shipped Discover Weekly the first time, we checked metrics and we've seen that they are all successful. Things are going so well. But 2 weeks later, the engineers realized that there is a bug in the feature, and the bug is actually injecting some liked song from time to time into Discover Weekly. And we started to question, what the hell? This is not supposed to be that way. And so they fixed it. And do you know what happened when they fixed it? Absolutely. Things went down. And so that was an interesting moment to think like, hey, people love Discover Weekly because from time to time, they found something familiar into it. But if it was completely new for them or unfamiliar, then it won't get that success. So inspired by that story, I put familiarity as an interesting point to check when you're building features. Think about even Google Glasses didn't work the first time because we've never seen them before. However, nowadays, when you see someone with the Apple glasses or those are start to become more familiar and so more successful. So again, I don't think we have time to go through them all, but it's about making sure that it's feasible, it's inclusive. Again, this is really, really important. We started the session talking about it, and it's never enough to talk about inclusiveness when we talk about emotion. It should not be distractive. It's not about distraction. It should almost do not feel there. I mean, the most delightful features are those that you almost do not notice it. If it should not interfere between the user and the product. It's about the experience, not the feeling. Again, continuity, we spoke about habituation effect. Do you have a plan to make this continuous? Do you have a plan to make this delight continuous, or is it like a one-off and then you move away? And of course, it's about measurability, because people think that delight is not measurable. However, there are ways of assessing user satisfaction. There are ways to measure users' happiness, and you need to align your delight metrics with your business metrics in order to make sure that you're serving for the right thing.
We've been talking a lot about delight. We've shown people how, through the delight grid, they can create delight. They've engineered it. What is anti-delight, the flip side of delight?
Actually, let me correct something here. Anti-delight is not the flip side of delight. It's not even the opposite of delight, because here's the reality. The opposite of delight is disappointment. I mean, if you want to have your users not delighted, you're going to get them disappointment. However, anti-delight is more like a deliberate technique that is sometimes used deliberately by certain products. It could be in the design, it could be into the way how they're building product in order to give you a sense of the product, but not the full experience. So it's sometimes it's used actually in a lot of products. Some of the example we can talk about here is like if you're a freemium user at Spotify, you have a limited number of skips. It means that you can enjoy the feature for a certain time, but then I have to limit that experience for you so I can drive you toward the premium. So you're not delighted at that moment, but at the same time, you're getting the full experience or part of the full experience. And it's a bit risky, by the way, because you need to balance between giving you enough information and enough experience, but also not enough to encourage you to move to the next peer. We see this a lot on B2B products as well. When I give you the experience for a certain time or for a certain seat, and then I ask you to pay for extra. So these are like anti-delight for me is more a technique that forces users to, or encourage user, let's say, to move to next plan.
If you had to summarize, what are the things that PMs or founders miss when they're trying to create an engineer delight?
I think especially, let me be transparent here. This emotional connection thing is not a new thing. I'm not the first one talking about emotional connection. It's even very well covered in design. It's very well covered in marketing. I mean, the best marketing campaign are the emotional ads. The best design is the emotional design. But here's the truth. I realized that, and I've been a product manager myself, like product managers and business people are not educated toward building delightful products. And that by itself creates a gap, meaning that you have marketers trying to aim for delight, designers aiming toward delight, and then business aiming for North Star metrics, revenues, OKRs, and metrics. And then that creates gap, that creates misalignments. So one of my biggest goals out of like evangelizing around delight or writing the book Product Delight was, number one, bringing this topic to the same level, like making these cross-functional people talk the same language and aim for the same goal. And that's by itself a huge step, because if we make these people work together, then we can achieve that goal. So that's my first goal. And the second goal was to, actually, we don't know how to. So the biggest mistake usually is when I don't know how to, I get back to my original mistake or my habit, which is, okay, let's build feature, let's go fast, let's go feature. And the other mistake I've seen is that people think that, okay, I will bring delight later. I mean, let me get it to the market, let me assess users' feeling, and then I will bring delight later. I agree that you need to work on functionality first. I agree that your product needs to function first. However, if you bring delight too late, you already built that perception, you already built that personality and that brand, and it's much harder to change it later. So I highly encourage people to think about delighting their customers as early in the process as later, because we might forgive for lack of functionality. And we spoke about like ChatGPT earlier as an example where we see like accuracy is a low delight category, and sometimes we get inaccurate answers from ChatGPT, completely non-accurate, and we forgive ChatGPT. Why? For the rest of the experience. Because don't aim for perfection of functionality. Bring in delight as early in the process as you can.
Amazing. So we talked a lot about delight. I have to ask you this question about Google because you were a PM there. What are the biggest misconceptions people have about being a PM at Google?
Okay, so maybe I had that misconception myself. So before I joined Google, I thought that working for Google will be about having very clear, very structured processes, and we're gonna be very strict about these steps, and it will be very well managed. And as soon as I joined Google, I quickly realized that it's definitely not about having a clear and structured process. It's about being able to navigate through chaos, because there is chaos. I mean, there is absolutely no way for me to describe to you a single process how we build product at Google. It's a lot about back and forth. Of course, there are like strict rules about making sure that we do not violate like a legacy, privacy, security, inclusiveness. Of course, like Google is very strict about those kind of things. But we allow ourselves to go crazy, and it means if you want to allow yourself to go crazy, it means that you're not gonna follow all the rules. And so maybe that's the biggest misconception. It's about thinking that working like building product for Google is about step-by-step process, but the reality is that about going back and forth and being comfortable with chaos, because it's chaos everywhere.
I loved all the short stories you shared about Google, even just going back to the checklist that we talked about at the beginning for diversity and inclusion around these filters that you guys put into Google Meet. So there's so many interesting anecdotes you shared with us today about your time at Google. How in the world did you leave? What are you up to now? Why did you leave this job that people consider having golden handcuffs?
Okay, I usually sometimes tell people in order to leave Google, you either have to be crazy or you have a great mission. I don't think I'm crazy. At least I don't hope I'm crazy. But I really left Google with a very clear mission in mind. Like having built product for over 15 years in, let's say, globally used and loved products, from Skype time, by the way, to Spotify, Google Meet, I started to acquire this concept of how to build successful products. And when I joined Google, I actually realized that there's even a discipline called delight, and we know how to delight our customers, and most people don't know how to. So when I left, I was like, this is really a mission I want to bring to the world. This is what I want to teach others about. This is what I want to demystify, because unfortunately it's very much seen as a buzzword. So when I left with a lot of insights in my head. And my first step was to put that into a written format. So I spent most of the first months trying to, of course, interview, like put my hat of researcher back and in order to consolidate the biggest knowledge and then put that on paper. And I wrote Product Delight. So I was really excited to bring Product Delight to the world through a few weeks ago, because now it's available on Amazon. And what I do nowadays is actually I help organizations through coaching, but also training, because I organize what I call Delight Days. So Delight Days is this like a delight workshop where we work together not only on understanding the concepts, but also get our hands dirty into building delightful features for their own products.
So for the PMs daydreaming about a mission like yours, that's strong. I'm curious, what's the real talk here? And feel free to not share if you aren't comfortable. But, how is life like post-Google? That's a really secure place. How big is the business as a solopreneur now?
I think from the beginning, in the very beginning, it came with a lot of uncertainty. I'm going to lie to you if I say I left Google with a lot of confidence. Let me be transparent with you. When I left Google, it was the most terrifying decision I made in my life. Like most of the experiences or like the career change I made so far are toward going to the best, like going from a product to another, trying to acquire more knowledge and more experience, or better level at least, like moving from a PM to senior PM or a leader. And when I moved away from Google with such established role and company, it was a lot of uncertainties. Like, hey, now I'm getting into this pure unknown world. But I'm very surprised nowadays that this is opening for me a lot of opportunity that I didn't get back then. Let me give you, I'm going to be very transparent with you today. I love being on stage. One of the things I do a lot nowadays is public speaking. I speak a lot about different topics. Actually, I started in this during my research time. Like when I was a researcher, I traveled the world and I did a lot of conferences. And I kept this for me, even during my PM roles. And before leaving Google, the thing that terrified me was like, what if nobody would invite me on stage anymore? Because I won't have this like senior PM from Google or senior PM from Spotify. I was terrified by that idea. But let me tell you the truth. The reality is that I'm getting maybe easily 20 more invitation and talk opportunities than before, because I'm not a PM anymore. I'm a creator of a model. I'm moving away from being a coach. I'm not just a coach. I mean, I don't see myself as coaching company based on others' framework. I'm really putting my heart and soul from my own experience to share my model and the framework I created. So I see that the career is taking another dimension, and I'm really enjoying it a lot. And at the same time, I'm doing things that I love, like teaching MBA students. I mean, I have the freedom to do the things that I really love at the scale that I love.
Amazing. What a role model for people who want to follow that. Do check her out, theproductdelightbook.com. She has an amazing LinkedIn presence as well. Nesrine, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Aakash.
Bye, everyone. So if you want to learn more about how to shift to this way of working, check out our full conversation on Apple or Spotify podcasts. And if you want the actual documents that we showed, the tools and frameworks and public links, be sure to check out my newsletter post with all of the details. Finally, thank you so much for watching. It would really mean a lot if you could make sure you are subscribed on YouTube, following on Apple or Spotify podcasts, and leave us a review on those platforms. That really helps grow the podcast and support our work so that we can do bigger and better productions. I'll see you in the next one.